Jonathan Majors, you starred in a couple of projects that strongly resonated this year, Five Bloods and Lovecraft Country, which both reckon with African American history in quite different ways. They would have been relevant even without the particular events of 2020. But did you imagine when you made them how they would connect to kind of the present moment as they were coming out this year?
I'd say the short answer to that is no. I think that, I mean, film and television is such a new form, it hasn't been around that long, but I look at, painters and writers and, sculptors, they'll make a piece of art and then it's only after their death that the art is relevant. They go, oh my God, have you seen this fucking Picasso? Oh my God, this Monet. Oh my goodness, you've got to read this Baldwin, etc. So it comes along, in time, but I did not imagine that it would be so quick, that we would make something, with the two projects respectfully, that their time for extreme relevance would be so close to their time um, of coming out. I didn't imagine that, and I think that's a special thing. And for it to be, two projects, I was just, I mean, I've been sitting in this house in Santa Fe, it's kind of like, wow, this is kind of wild, isn't it? Um, yeah, yeah.
And with Lovecraft Country, that's based on a novel by Matt Ruff, but it's also, kind of inspired by the lore of Lovecraft, and which has its own complexity because he was known to be a fairly racist in his views, and so it's sort of
Racist. Racist. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so it's sort of reclaiming sort of that lore to tell a story of what would just be everyday horror for the African American experience during Jim Crow.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, there's something to that, man. I think that's the beauty of, the teams that were a part of that project. Lovecraft Country, Misha Green, Jordan Peele, J.J. Abrams, Sonia Winton, Jonathan Kidd. These guys and gals took that, that folklore, that sense of factoids, etc., and completely corrected a narrative. I think that's such a beautiful thing. I mean, it's and in many ways it's what many marginalized groups do. You take your constrictions, you take your less than position, and you make the best out of it. I can only think about, I grew up down home in Texas, and on plantations, that's where soul food comes from. We take the shit that someone had given us, and turn it into, turkey necks and chitlins and etc. Things like that, and that's what we did with Lovecraft. We took the negative views and opinions, and we took those and we completely. It's very, Shelley, right? We took the monster and deconstructed it, into humanity, which I don't think he saw that coming. So, bam, and I mean, and just to speak to the Five Bloods, we kind of did the same thing there. The narrative of the Vietnam War is that of, rock and roll and Star Spangled Banners and long haired, shoot 'em up, rah rah America, and even the violence is a bit romantic in some ways, and in both those versions, the protagonists, the bodies that are moving through it, don't necessarily represent the America that we live in, or that was thriving and struggling at the time of the war. So Spike does the same thing. He takes that narrative, he takes those factoids, and offers a corrective, and therefore an addition to the history of not just Black culture, but American culture.
And one of the especially interesting things about Lovecraft is the way it sort of blends genres. Like you'll have an episode that's sort of like this witchcraft horror, and then you'll have another that's almost like an Indiana Jones kind of adventure mixed with time travel. And what was it like getting to explore all of those kinds of different kind of styles that are so famous in sort of American storytelling over the years,
Yeah,
and to see it from these angles?
man. I mean, I completely get it now. You know why some actors would spend, the idea of like a franchise. Like something like that. We're like, how could you possibly, let's take Indiana Jones, right? How could you possibly, make multiple movies of that? Well, it's quite fun. That's how, like it is fun, like for adults, for grown people, to be able to not only tell human stories, but tell human stories in these extreme situations, And what we did with Lovecraft was like we took I think Misha Green's objective was like, how much can we fuck with these guys and see, like, how flexible are they? Like it was a dream in many ways, to go to. I mean, we did a whole war episode, and that then we do a whole like, I mean, Aunt Hippolyta gets a whole like Afro-futuristic episode. Like you jump through a portal, you do a deep dive to the bottom of a ship. I mean, those things don't just happen, every day. And so, and if they do, I mean, they don't necessarily happen for little black boys from the South Side of Chicago, you know. Uh, and so to present that, and to experience that, and therefore have, audiences experience that, and young kids that look like, the protagonists of Lovecraft see that. It just opens things up to the nth degree for what we can do moving forward, and not just black folks, but any marginalized group, that we as a society, we as a species are not pigeonholed to one type of performance, to one type of genre or anything like that. We can expand it, and when we expand it, I mean, it's a free for all, and there I think we make the most crucial, the most relevant art.
And spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the entirety of Lovecraft Country. I yeah, I do want to talk about the ending. So like, yeah, anyone can pause here and then come back. And because what happens in the end of the season, tragically, your character Tick dies. He sacrifices himself.
Yeah.
Um, Considering the way the show deals with kind of magic and the otherworldly, like, do you if there's another season, do you imagine like any way you might be able to have a role in that, or are you sort of content to leave his story kind of where it was?
Man, I was just saying to a colleague of yours, like one of the things at this time, with the pandemic, with the racial unrest, with the quarantines, with the election, you can't plan for anything, man. And like it's just best to, for me, and this is also how I create, you kind of have to, hold on loosely, and so, I am at the will of the angels of HBO, the inspirational Misha Green, etc. But no, man, I'm quite satisfied with where things ended, and if there's a version, I'm sure that'll be talked about. If there isn't, uh, it was an incredible ride, man, and I felt so fortunate to kind of be you know a part of it, and an integral part of it, So however the story has to move and evolve, I support it 110%.
One thing that Lovecraft Country and Da 5 Bloods have in common, at least from watching it, is a sense of physicality. They both seem like very kind of intense physical processes and put your characters in these physically grueling situations. What was it, kind of like to be in those intense roles and moments, and was it physically draining? Was it exhilarating?
Dandelion tea, right? I don't know if you know what that does, right? But dandelion tea is an adrenal replenisher. So I mean, for me, as little acting as possible is my is kind of like my mantra. Like you kind of want that. That way you don't get busted, and there's no that's where judgment and stuff comes in. So the physicality to me always feels like a part of the given circumstances. And with David, for instance, it wasn't written, but he's a Black Studies teacher, and all I can remember of, my high school days is that, yeah, the health coach is also the coach, or like the social studies teacher is also like the PE instructor. And so with David, I knew there was the track and field background, and so I just embraced that, because the way the body moves, someone's fitness, there's no judgment on it. It just is what it is, but that gives so much information, to the audience, and also to me as an actor. I go, okay, if someone's built this way, how would they feel things? How do they view the world? What makes him run so fast? Why track, David? Why not field? Why not shot put? You're a pretty stocky guy. Why was it track? Why was it hurdles? Um, and to me, I just kind of sit and wax poetic about that. And like, what is it to be a soldier? In the case of Atticus, Atticus went from like 0 to 100. You know what I'm saying? Like in the war, his body shifted and held on to the trauma of war. And yes, he may have come back with a pair of shoulders and biceps. But those things are hard earned. And so when they say go, and you've got to use that physicality for an action sequence, that's just storytelling. And he's prepared for that because that is what he's had to do to survive. you know it's also a lot of fun. Your adrenaline gets up, and you're in it. And then there's a delicate balance of, like, the art of it, where, okay, he can't move like I move. He has to move the way Atticus moves. Like, David's actually left-handed, I'm right-handed. Simple things like that. Like, that changes their way of moving. To me, I use the physicality to you know understand the character more, understand the fella more. Yeah.
And another thing about understanding your character, David, in *The Five Bloods* is, in addition to this just own personal history he has this long, complicated history, obviously, with his father, played by Delroy Lindo. Like, what was it like, sort of developing what we don't see in the film, like to get kind of developing these years and years of a relationship, just from these experiences we're seeing between these two characters on screen?
Sometimes, you do a role, and the director or your compatriot, wants to get with you and work with you, and, like, you guys decide what it is. And one of the things I learned from Delroy, I called him, right after I was given his number from Spike. He said, you should call him. You guys hook up. And Delroy was very clear that he wanted me to have my own process in it, and that what we brought to work that day is what it would be. And for me, I was a bit, quiet as it's kept. I was quite nervous about that because, I'm coming from drama school where, you could literally sit after class, or, go to wherever you guys were gonna go to the park, and sit outside the theater, and kind of talk about, so this is what I think, what do you think, blah blah blah. Like, that's one way of working. So this was the first time where, and it's Delroy Lindo. It's not like it's some guy. It's Delroy Lindo. And so you trust the process. But that doesn't mean on the day I wasn't nervous. And so when we got together, you know when it was go time, it's like, all right, I know how to do, I know how to, I know what to do, like I know what to do, but I don't know how this is gonna go, and that's real chemistry. You know what I'm saying? Where there's nothing planned, and so Delroy and I have similar backgrounds. As he's a graduate from ACT, I happen to have gone to a few drama schools, so we understand the technical approach. Um, you know, pretty. We have the same lessons. He's been at it a great deal longer than me, um, um, and he's Delroy Lindo. So, um, yeah, when we got in there, there were moments of like, I'm really trusting you here. Like the only thing we talked about is that we both have fathers. And for me, that was my way into David. What's the big attachment? And the big attachment for him is his father. And if I get honest with myself, my big attachment for myself personally, is my father. And as complex and nuanced and fucked up and hard and lovely as that is, and you don't copy and paste, but you do use those raw materials. And Delroy, has a son, and he was using those raw materials. And so it is a sense of mysticism, when all of a sudden those things become one, you know, that when I look at, I mean, I'm working with Delroy Lindo now on this film out here, and literally will turn around and say, "Dad," you know, you know, and he'll answer, Um, so so yeah, we work those things by trusting one another, and doing our own work independently, and bringing those things to play, and just kind of surrendering to the process of it all.
And one thing that makes *Da 5 Bloods* resonate differently, sort of after the fact, of course, was how shocked and saddened we all were by Chadwick Boseman's sudden death, and the way the film deals with kind of mortality and mourning and loss. It sort of hits different with that in retrospect.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts about that, and sort of looking at the film now through that lens?
Oh man, um, there's something about art that makes things immortal. You know, um, it plays on in the pages of time for eons. Forever. You know, and for me, the story of Storm and Norman, you know, um, was one of like, they say David has a line where he says, "Who was that guy?" And Otis says, "He was the best soldier," you know, etc. And the same can be said about, you know, brother Chadwick. Where you go, "Who was that guy?" It's like, oh man, just wait and see. You know, just wait and see. Not only um, what he did, you know, but what he's doing. You know, um, so he's left this um, tangible world. You know what he's doing now. And what his resonance will be. In this art form. You know, um, I am here. I am doing the work I'm doing because of what Chadwick Boseman has given to not just cinema, but to culture, Black culture, American culture, um, world culture at large. So when you watch the film and you see that there's this presence that is constantly around, constantly pulling and pushing people towards something greater, that is the legacy of Chadwick Boseman, as well as Storm and Norman. I like to think, I have no doubt that Brother Chadwick knew what he was doing when he was picking roles and, making his way through the world, and yeah, I feel very fortunate to have met him and to have worked with him in that way, and to be a though brief contemporary of his.
Well, I want to thank you so much for talking to me about both, Lovecraft Country and Defy Bloods and everything else you're working on. I'm sure, like, hopefully everything is going well in your world, all things considered in 2020.
Oh man, 2020 is the 2020 is a big year, man. You know, it's the year of uh, necessity. You know, unfortunately, uh, but we're doing all right.
Well, thank you again, and have a great day.
You too, brother.